I'm not alone.
You really do help people.
Your kindness will never be forgotten.
Without Trinity support, I would not have achieved my lifelong goal of becoming debt-free.
All right, it is 9:30 here at the studios of KTUI. I'm Sam Scott. Glad to have you along here. And with me this morning is Nancy Harold from the Sacred Fire Farms. And good morning. How are you?
I am very well, Sam. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to come back here and talk about what I love to talk about the most, which is holistic health.
Yes. So we started a couple of months ago talking about cancer, and we kind of got in the middle of it and had to quit and continue it to the next month. And I think we have continued
We're
it.
on part 3 now.
Yeah, part 3 now. Yeah. So tell us, where did we stop?
Well, we stopped at some of the simple kind of holistic things, and I want to preface this with saying that even though I'm a nurse, everything I'm sharing today is not FDA approved. It is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, prevent, or mitigate any disease. It's amazing how well those roll off my tongue.
You've said that before.
Yes,
right?
I've said that before, a time or two. And it's really just based on my intense... I grew up with a grandfather who was part Cherokee, and he gave me my first wild crafting experience and going out and collecting herbs and roots and barks and things. And I think it left a mark. And always throughout my medical career, when I was actually working in the hospital, working in an ER, I kept thinking there's something more, there's something we're missing here. And again, a lot of these modalities aren't researched well because they haven't found a way to be monetized, and therefore, they're considered fringe. Some of them have been accepted as complementary alternative medicine, CAM therapies, CAM, complementary alternative medicine, and some doctors allow them along with their normal chemo, and some do not, simply saying, I don't know that much about it, or I don't feel, I know enough to say this wouldn't interfere. But most of these holistic therapy, in my experience and the extensive research and things that I've done, have, some basis. And if you go to publications like the NIH, NCBI, government, little abstracts, they said, well, this shows promise, but we need more research. And then the research isn't done, so it doesn't become an accepted therapy. So it's not that they're being outcast completely. They're just saying we don't have enough to make this a standard. So as it is, I think we left off last on alkaline water. And alkaline water is just based on the premise that you can modify the pH of water so that cancer cells can't thrive in it. And if you make your water alkaline, most of our pre-prepared diet is pretty acidic. So if you can shift that a little bit, drink alkaline water. I think they're made commercially. That's believed to create an environment where cancer cells can't propagate and may even, can't live. So there's a few easy ways, actually, to alkalinize your water. Sometimes it's as simple as putting some lemon in your water. Although lemon's acidic, when it goes into the water and it's digested, it becomes very basic and it alkalinizes the bloodstream. You can get alkaline drops at a health food store, little drops you put in your water. There's a number of machines and gizmos and alkaline water machines, and additionally to having it commercially prepared where you can go to someplace that carries alkaline water, a drugstore, and pick up a prepackaged bottle that says alkaline on it. I'm not sure, I've not tried those, and I haven't known anybody who swears by them, but they are out there. There is something called a Kanzen machine that especially preaches alkaline water, and it's fairly expensive, sometimes up to $4,000, and they need replacement filters and everything else. Yeah. Or at least last I checked, that's where they started. There's a stir wand, believe it or not, available on by a company called quantumagewater.com. Dr. Haywood used to carry them when I worked there. A lot of people bought them, but you look like an overgrown swizzle stick. It's really fun. And in the basis of these, it's like, what does this do? In the basis of these, they put minerals, and the concept behind it is the minerals are what we would find in our pure spring water. if we drank from a spring that was unpolluted, and that naturally alkalinizes our body. So you stir it with this mineral. And the guy who invented them, I've had several conversations with him when I did radio. He says, now you can't say magnetized water. I said, well, what context do you put it in? Because to me, it's magnetizing. You know, the minerals aren't coming in contact with the water directly. But yeah, he has quite a number of success stories, and he's done a lot of research to back that up. So that's quantumagewater.com. The other thing that is I advise people to do if they're looking at cancer, and it's really just bulking up your nutrition when you can't get enough fruits and vegetables every day. I like the superfoods. Juice Plus is something that's pretty well known by people. I think it's a good quality product. Again, it's kind of requires a monthly subscription, so it can get pretty pricey. There's also a green drink on Amazon called Amazing Grass. That is more economical, and it can be, on a subscription, or you can try it once. Apple cider vinegar, something as simple as that. Again, one of those acidic things that becomes alkaline in the body. And those are...
Let me stop you there. I've heard that, and then somebody had told me, well, if you're going to do that apple cider vinegar, it has to say with the mother on it. Now, what is that?
That just means, I think, it's part of the, the fermentation process.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's taken out for cosmetic reasons, because it looks like this big glob. If you look at it, it's... if there's any kombucha fans, I have trouble with fermented drinks myself. But, we're all different. We all have we're as different as our fingerprints, is my famous line. But, it just means it's a very pure, it's not been diluted, it's not been, to my knowledge, this is how I regurgitate it. Somebody else may have another story, but that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay.
I don't tolerate apple cider vinegar, so I've not done a lot of deep dive in that. I just know that it can be responsible for alkalinizing the blood. The other thing that I didn't really understand, I used homeopathy for a number of things, but mostly cognitive. And homeopathy is a real interesting science. In Europe, I think it's used a lot more than it is here, and it's actually regulated like we regulate prescriptions. In this country, you can order about any homeopathy you want online. There are a couple actually designed for cancer, believe it or not. And one of them is carcinosinum, and the other one is carcinosinum T58. The difference between these two things is one is just the generic, I think it's a breast cancer cell. The homeopathy principle is like treats like, And I guess I got to go into a little bit of background about the guy who created it, because I think that is really what is, caused me to have a lot of esteem for it as a science. The homeopathy is actually over 200 years old. It was created in the mid-1700s by a man, Dr. Samuel Hahnemann was considered the father of homeopathy. And he was not a rich man, but he wanted to be a doctor. And he actually wanted to know, how to fix people, how to operate in the best and most, righteous way with integrity he could. Got out practicing a few years, and he realized some of the treatments were so barbaric. We're giving people mercury, we were bleeding with leeches, and nothing was making them better. And he kind of reached a point where he says, I can't do this to my fellow human beings. And he checked out and began to translate medical texts. Well, some of these medical texts, he spoke several languages, so and a lot of them were in Latin, where he could translate to and from. So he actually got pretty good at it. And what he was noticing as a pattern as he's doing this is you could use some of these remedies if you diluted them a lot, almost to the point where nothing was left of the remedy. And he tried it on himself versus an experiment. And he tried it on some of the people apprenticing with it and found this like cures like. And some of these remedies, they usually come in two preps that are most commonly used. There certainly are more. But there's like an X prep and a C prep, and the difference is like dosing. X preps, anything that has like 30X, 6X after that, it's mostly done for physical things. But then if you get into the C preps, which are still can be pretty moderate in dosing, they really have none of the original stuff in them, and they just deal with emotional as well as physical. Which is kind of interesting because cancer almost always has an emotional
Oh, yeah.
onset. Some sort of oppression, something eating at you. So what's really funny is when I work with people who do the homeopathy for cancer, even the most basic one, the carcinosinum, they start to realize that where they had not set boundaries before, they're setting boundaries now. One lady says, "My husband says I'm getting a little lippy." But it was things that, in the way that needed to be, she had never brought to the surface.
I see, yeah.
And so she was driving all that down, and that was probably eating on her in some way. Carcinosinum T58 is one that I have used, and what it is 58 different kinds of cancer tissues and cancer cells that are blended together. And where I went to use it was on another, I talk about the black salve that was used for the one lesion on my scalp that cleared it up. But I had some smaller lesions, and I recognized from what I had done before they were probably the same thing. And I just started on a course of the carcinosinum T58, and it seemed like in 3 weeks those lesions were gone.
Wow.
Now I probably caught it early. It might have been expectation. I'm not, I'm just, drawing cause and effect from my own experience. But you can still find it online. Carcinosinum T58 is available through homeopathy companies in England and the UK. I haven't found any in the U.S. that makes it. They just make the carcinosinum. So if you want the high potency stuff, you have to go overseas. Another benefit, I have a friend who swears by this. 2 people I know swear by this as basically turning around their cancer that was pretty much described as hospice situation, is colon hydrotherapy. We would know it as a high colonic. It actually has some cleansing of toxins. It clears up the liver, relieves inflammation. There's always a corollary, it seems, with inflammation and cancer. I don't know anymore who does it around here. I imagine it's another thing you'd have to search for as a practitioner. But it's listed as an alternative cancer therapy. I want to talk about lymphatic drainage. The lymphatic system, there's a school of thought that if you keep your lymphatics clear, you never have to worry about cancer. Because the lymphatics is like our last-ditch sewer system. It kind of gets the stuff that the liver misses and kidneys miss and tries to get out of the body. But with a lot of the chemicals, even something as simple as pesticides, our lymphatic system gets clogged pretty easily. So anything that clears that, like a lymphatic massage, there's herbals that work on cleansing lymphatics. Self-heal is one that I know of. Just missed the other one. It'll come back to me. So many things. Yes, thank you. Cleavers. I could see the C, but that's as far as I got. They are very good for moving lymphatics and clearing those out. Burdock also is noted for clearing out lymphatics. Rebounders, light jumping, believe it or not, is helpful for clearing lymphatics and keeping those clean. So if you find that you might like a gentle exercise but are not really sure you want to invest in a lot of equipment, the rebounders, I see them all the time for sale on Etsy and eBay, and you can get even one used and try that and just work on your lymphatics.
I can remember, it seems like it was a long time ago when they came out with the little trampolines.
That's what they are.
Yeah. Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can remember them talking about this being good for your lymphatic system.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, those little trampolines.
But you don't see a whole lot of them anymore.
No. I will say sometimes, if you've got some degenerative changes in your spine, they're not real comfortable because of the bouncing. And I think that's a problem that I had.
Oh.
I can do what I want, but, I've got some stuff there that shows up I see. If my body doesn't exercise, it doesn't like. Mushrooms have gotten a lot of notoriety lately as far as dialing back cancers. And actually, other countries, use it as part of their therapy. I think Japan will use mushrooms in a lot of sarcoma, specifically the turkey tail mushroom, has found to be extremely tumor limiting. And there's so many. Shiitake, maitake, which we know around here as hen of the woods, cordyceps, reishi. You can find all these in commercial blends put together. But turkey tail actually comes up for quite a bit of cancer reduction. And if there's anybody out there who's a mushroom hunter, you see turkey tail, they kind of grow on the side of the logs and they look kind of like turkey tails. That's how they got their name. What I like about those when I'm gathering mushroom is turkey tail has a lot of lookalikes, but none of them are dangerous, according to any research I found. All of them have some property or some benefit as the true turkey tail, but just not as much as if you get the true turkey tail. The way I was taught to recognize turkey tail, it's considered a polypore, so it's got little microscopic pores if you turn it on the underside. It's got kind of a light rim. It's very light in color. Some of the others are smooth. They don't have the pores. So if you want to have some fun mushroom hunting, you can go out and look for turkey tail. SCAC is fairly well known. The story goes that Renee Cassé, who was a Canadian nurse, received formulas from a patient who was treated by natives in Canada. And she then approached the natives about getting the formula. And usually most SCAC contains the burdock, the red clover, I think slippery elm, and, citing my memory here, turkey rhubarb. I can grow everything but the turkey rhubarb. So it's seems to not like our Missouri soil very much. I haven't been able to grow complete formula for my SCAC. But the report was that Renee used it to cure both her mother and her aunt of end-stage cancer. I think the mother had liver cancer and the aunt had breast cancer, and they cleared up about 10 days after drinking the tea. Yeah. There's SCAC formulas online. They say if you get it, you want to make sure it has at least 25% of the sheep sorrel root, as well as the leaf. And that's a big, important piece of it. I want to make sure I stay on time here. Looking at the clock, I have to wind myself up.
Well, we can always extend
Do
it
part
over
4.
into next month.
Keep it going. Hydrogen peroxide protocol. There is a great article written by Dr. David Williams. It's becoming less easy to find, but if you Google David Williams and hydrogen peroxide curse or cure, you usually get, because he actually approaches it from both sides, and that's what I liked. I like the pros and cons, but it's really good for recurring infection. You have to use food-grade hydrogen peroxide, which is 35%, and that's not available on Amazon. They only offer it 12%. There is a company called Bluebonic, like the plague, and you can order it from their website if you want 35% food grade. Increased vitamin D has been taught to be very important for cancer. D3 is looked at like our master hormone. We've talked about that in the course of other diseases. Mixed bag here. Physicians will prescribe 50,000 IUs at a crack for somebody who is recovering from cancer, as well as people who have osteoporosis. But there's a lot of information. If you go to Healthline, they say, oh, you shouldn't take over 450 IUs. Well, I get annoyed, or I get suspicious when there's such great disparity among, similar fields. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that later on if we have time today, and some things that made me look at cancer as a parasitic. But vitamin D3 is essential, I think, for fighting off cancer. I think 5,000. I actually will take 10, sometimes 20,000 IUs when I think that I've come in contact with a cold or somebody who has COVID. I believe that's kind of helped keep me healthy and disease-free as well as cancer-free. I think that I want to make sure I haven't missed anything here. So almost anything that can be used as a prevention can be used as a treatment. If I were a new cancer patient, we talked about Eimerman's Angels, I think I mentioned before, but it's worthy of a re-mention again. This was started by a young man who went through cancer by himself. And I don't know the situation. His family pretty much had abandoned him. And he was 26 years old with a diagnosis of testicular cancer. And he says, if I survive this, I'm going to make sure nobody has to go through cancer alone. So last time I checked, it was a free service. It was a database. Somebody fighting cancer could be paired with, they could actually list what they wanted in a buddy. It's a buddy system. And the buddy that they're assigned has to have been cancer-free 5 years, a cancer survivor. And it's really helped raise survivability by 80%, according to the last check on the website. He gives other, last I checked, he had some resources for the spouses of people going through cancer, because that's a very different journey, the person going through it and the person who's helping to support them. There's a Rife machine that treats cancer with frequencies, and you have to know somebody in this area who has a Rife machine. I have one. I've not mastered it. There is a Connors Clinic in Lake Elmo, Minnesota. When I last checked, they were offering Rife therapy, and basically it's a few hours where you kind of lay with these electrodes, and it provides current that kills cancer cells, is believe it's the way it's supposed to work. RSO, the Rick Simpson oil, RSO is the abbreviation for that. It's actually available through Missouri dispensaries, I think, right now, if you have a medical card. So it's a cannabis product that is anti-cancer. There's an old Amish hedge apple treatment, and there's actually some, like I talked about, nominal research saying this could be good, especially for brain cancers, which are very hard to treat. We talked about the emotional component of cancer, and sometimes when we focus on it, like a lot of family members who've died of cancer, it creates a stage, I hate to say it, but I believe this plays into it, where we become more susceptible to cancer ourselves. This runs in my family. I'm not going to, it's in my genes. I'm not going to escape that. But since we last spoke, one thing that came to light, and I thought this was very interesting because I had gone to Florida for some holistic training where they really looked at cancer as a parasitic. It's actually a tiny parasite. Now, in the 30s, Royal Rife, who invented this Rife therapy, had developed an electron microscope that would allow him to see that and see what these tiny, tiny little microorganisms that aren't available with the normal microscope. He fashioned some version of an electron microscope that did not destroy the microorganism in order for it to be seen. And he made the determination this actually was a tiny little parasite. This is where the mismatch comes in that makes me go, So that was never released. Royal Rife's laboratory was destroyed when he refused to sell his technology to the AMA. So, that's a separate story. But in 1985, the Susan G. Komen Foundation, who does all the research for the big breast cancer treatment, actually noted, guess what? Wait for it. That little cancer was actually a parasite. Oh. That information was never released. So that made me go, And then if you go to the American Cancer Society, and these are things that really you would think would line up and support each other. The American Cancer Society, on its FAQs, frequently asked questions, says, how come we haven't developed a vaccine for cancer? And the answer that I saw at that time was literally, well, it's not like it's a microorganism or anything. But Susan G. Komen just said that it was. So, whereas, do you talk to each other, guys? Come on, share the wealth. So that, coming back from Florida, I started to do a little deeper dive, and what I found was, they are using ivermectin successfully, even sometimes in conjunction with chemo, and having a lot of tumor shrinkage with that. There's a gentleman who became known for the Joe Tippins formula or protocol, and it was actually Joe Tippin who was on hospice. He had cancer in the bones. It started a small cell for the lung, and he was just given no hope, and he says, what do I have to lose? So couldn't get ivermectin. He chose the fenbendazole, which is normally a dog wormer, but you can actually get it in caplet form. And his protocol was studied by an MD called Tom Rogers. This is a physician speaking. And he says that the fenbendazole, which is along with the artemisinin we talked about before, are two very, very prominent things that seem to be turning around cancer. They are not They're not in conflict with any of the current chemotherapies unless you're already taking them. But this is what he says that really jumped out at me with the neon light. He says that the fenbendazole works the same way as a chemotherapy, goes through the same channels. The problem is chemotherapy, the body often becomes resistant to it. Fenbendazole has never shown that resistance. So, and supposedly, when Joe Tippin did his protocol, I think he was like 3 days of fenbendazole, 1 day off. The dosage he recommends is 444 milligrams. Sometimes when people are taking chemo, it might be cut down to 222. Fenbendazole is actually available on Amazon. May not be after people hear this, but I'm a little jaded, I admit this, because things don't match. And if I had a family member that had tried everything and, before giving up, we'd certainly try this. What have you got to lose? It's,
Right.
I think, $68 or $70 for a month's supply. And it's a lot cheaper than chemo. And it has a lot of recorded histories, anecdotally, of having worked for people when nothing else did. So that's kind of where I want to leave them. I did pretty good on time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We still have 4 minutes. We talk about the Super Bowl or with.
Please no. No, I can fill the space easily with
Okay.
what we
No.
got going on with our
All right, go ahead.
farm. I'm very excited. I wanted a storefront of sorts for 2 years, almost 2 years, and never could bring it together. I got mired in other things. So I actually had a lovely case gifted to me, rearranged to what was our first classroom to become our storefront. We're having a grand opening for that on March the 2nd. Like I said, dates, numbers, they're just fluid. March the 2nd. Just going to let people come in, look at it. We've got some fun things, little ceramic vintage potters that have air purifying plants in them. I also have some vintage jewelry. We're going to have our bulk herbs there if anybody wants to try some tea blends, our herbal supplements that we just sell by a suggested donation. If you come up a few dollars short, you go away with the supplement anyway. Because I don't think health should ever be dependent on a dollar sign. So I'm really excited about that. We've got our barn dance scheduled, another one coming up on April 20th. And that's just pure fun. We go into the barn, we have live music. The Miss Crystal's pretty good string band usually does well by us. And we have callers who teach as we go, so it's a very gentle, very fun. We make a lot of mistakes. I think I make the most. And if you have 2 left feet like me, and my husband sometimes has 3, bless you, dear, you can still do it. That's the great part about it. We have classes coming up. You can go to our events page at sacredfireliving.com and actually sign up to get little notifications of all the different classes and courses we had. We just had something kind of fun called the Mad Hatter's Tea Party, where you looked at how teas had been used as food and medicine all over the world, and we made our own tea blend, and we had a hat contest. So sometimes it's a combined learning and fun thing, and we, try to make that as friendly as we can. We host an herbal group. If anybody's interested in knowing about herbs, we do the Merrimack Valley Herbal Guild. It's actually was founded by myself and one of my mentors. We just wanted to spread the ability to teach this history, this Ozark tradition that was so much a part of our culture, and not make it dependent upon a dollar sign to do that. So you come, you attend, we have a different speaker, it's free, it's the first Sunday of every month at 1 o'clock, and that's out at the farm in our barn as well.
All right. How do people find it?
You can go again to the website, which is www.sacredfireliving.com. And then you can also call us if you have any questions. Our phone number is 573-732-5053.
And I've noticed that you're good about posting things on your Facebook page.
Yeah.
And I don't know, do you have like Instagram and all the other?
I am not tied into Instagram. I only have so much time in the day. I probably should be, but not yet. That's on the to-do list. But we do have a Sacred Fire Farms Facebook page.
All right. Nancy, what are you considering talking about next month?
Well, I've had a number of friends come up with shingles.
Oh,
and so I want
yeah.
to talk about holistic remedies for shingles for that.
Okay. Well, that is a serious
Yeah.
problem here.
Yeah. And the vaccines, well-intentioned, don't necessarily keep people from getting shingles all the time. They might get a milder form, but they don't.
All right, Nancy, well, we'll talk to you again next month then.
That sounds wonderful.
Second
Look forward
Tuesday.
to it.
All right. We are AM 1560 KTUI Sullivan. It's 10 o'clock.
USA News, I'm Ryan Daniels. The Atlanta District Attorney bringing Georgia election charges against former President Trump may be forced off the case. USA's John Schaefer with more.
On